This position is the most important ring skill to master for the average fitnesser. Here's why. The top support position strengthens the interstabilizing muscles by forcing you to keep the arms pulled close to the body for balance. It builds stronger rotator cuffs and scapula and improves mobility of the shoulders by working towards getting proper scapular depression and slight downward rotation needed for the rings turned out position. It builds a strong core with improved balance, stability, and proprioception due to the fact that the rings are open chain and move around. It builds tendon strength and general straight arm strength that will help with any other movement where you're locking out your arms. And when you're working on the rings, the top support position is something you're always going to return to when you're above the rings performing muscle ups, holding an L sit, or even transitioning into and out of a bent arm stand. And those are just a few reasons why the top position is the first skill that you should master when working on the rings. In this video, I'm going to take you through everything you need to know about the top position, including how to train it step by step. All right, so you'll typically find the following exercises as suggestions when you start off training on the gymnastic rings. Hanging, which is great for grip strength and shoulder health. Reverse rows, which are a fabulous starting place for building pulling strength. And of course, you're going to see push-ups in there because they're fabulous for basic pushing strength above the rings. And because your feet are on the ground, you'll be able to better stabilize yourself. But here's the thing, the better you get at controlling yourself above the rings with feet off the ground, the better full body awareness and stability you're going to have for when you practice movements both above the rings and under the rings. Let's go over some common mistakes that I frequently see. I usually see people just jump up there and try the top position, and the rings start shaking like crazy. You're going to lose control of your arms, and there's no telling which direction they're going to go when you fall out. Poor form with back rounded, arms bent, and rings turned inward. Now, training this posture doesn't mean you're getting stronger at the top position. It means you're training crappy posture, which will actually lead to even worse posture. Not spending enough time building the proper straight arm strength in the top position. Building the necessary tendon strength for ring training is extremely important, and that can't be rushed. Taking the time to work through the top position progressions that I'm going to be sharing with you will help build that strength in the beginning so as to decrease injury down the road. The way to make sure that you don't screw this up is to always focus on making it easy for you to get into the proper position. No matter what progression you're working on, the goal is always to assess and feel when there's a slight change to the posture, then work to get back into the proper position. Now we're going to cover what that proper position is so that you can practice getting really, really good at it. The key point here is to lower the rings so that you're able to place your feet on the ground. By having your feet on the ground for assistance, you can work on the position without overtaxing the central nervous system by having to fight to keep you up there. This assistance allows you to assess what's going on in your posture and make those adjustments safely so that you can spend more time in the correct position. Here's the position we want. Shoulders pulled back into neutral position and downward. This is shoulder depression. Elbows locked out and facing forward, gradually working to turn the rings outward. However, in the beginning, I suggest keeping them close to the body for better support. Keep your wrists straight in line and not breaking to the outside or inside of the rings. Finally, don't squeeze the rings as hard as you can. It's not necessary, so relax your grip. All right, so now that you know the position, this is how you can train it. With the rings about shoulder width apart, set them up at a height so that you can comfortably stand between the rings with your feet flat on the floor and arms extended down by your side. This is the starting position. Now you're probably going to be tempted to just pull your feet off the ground and try that top position, okay? Don't. Remember, you're trying to work towards building the necessary tendon strength and keep that posture so that you don't get injured. The top position is so important. And this is going to come into play when you start working on your muscle ups and all the other fun stuff out there. All right, so here are the progressions that I suggest you work through. Feet flat on the floor, making sure to push down and through the rings. Knee bend with feet still on the floor. Up on your toes. Toes pulled just slightly behind you. Feet off the floor. So once those are easy for you, you're gonna raise the rings so that the bottom of the rings are in line with your hips. This is gonna force you to jump up into the rings and catch yourself with feet fully off the ground and body straight. Pull the rings close into your sides as soon as you jump. Now this is where you'll really start to improve your stabilizer muscles and control. So for this progression, if you have a partner, then you can have them spot you. This is how you're gonna do it. Once you're ready to jump up there and you have someone to help spot you, this is how they can do it. Super simple. You're gonna grab a hold of the rings, and all your spotter is going to do is grab a hold of the rings as well. When you jump up there, your spotter is going to pull the rings into your hips. That's it. The cool thing here is that you can start to adjust the tension in terms of how much you're spotting simply by using your fingers. 3 fingers, 2, 1, then slowly taking the hands away, making them fight for it. Super simple way, but the spotter is always there to help and pull the rings back in if you need it. That's it. Now remember, at any point, if you feel your posture change during any of these progressions, then work to get back into that proper position by either adjusting your feet or your toes, or you could even drop down to a previous progression and continue to work with that. You're gonna get so good at this position that it just becomes natural for you, and that's what we want. And the reason is that when you're working on more advanced moves above the rings, you're gonna get tired. But you'll know that you can always come back to that top position because it's a place of safety for you because you own that movement. Now, if you're just getting started with rings training, I would make the top position your primary thing to focus on and only focus on that for a couple sessions. And don't worry, this is only for a couple sessions. And by doing this, it's gonna set you up on the right track so that when you add in those other movements, you'll be good and ready. You're gonna practice the top position by using a variation that you can hold for 10 seconds with perfect form. The key point here is practice. And because you're practicing the position here, you're not looking to burn yourself out. You want to be able to get into the position and hold it as perfectly as possible. Okay, so practice 5 to 10 attempts of the top position for 10 seconds each, with a solid rest in between each attempt. Upwards of a 2-minute break between sets in the beginning. And by the way, you might think that you're using perfect form, but the only way to know is by taking video. So I really encourage you to take video when you're practicing. Chances are you're using a progression that's still a little too tough for you. Don't let ego get in the way of improvement. And as I've mentioned numerous times, the most important thing here is that you're practicing on getting really good at the proper position and not looking to burn yourself out. But take note that as you increase the number of attempts, they will get more difficult. So just drop down a progression or 2 when your form starts to falter. And don't worry, you're still going to be improving, because remember, the goal here is to practice the proper position. All right, so once you feel that you've practiced enough attempts, it's time for a burner set. Well, this is where you take the last progression that you practiced and perform a finisher set where you're going to hold that for as long as you can for a single attempt. For example, let's say that for your last practice attempt, you used the top position with just your toes touching the ground and you held that for 10 seconds. For your finisher, you're going to take that same progression now, but hold it for as long as you can until your form starts to break down. Then you're done. Now this should be super tough, but I want you to fight to hold that proper position for as long as you possibly can. Now this is going to build strength endurance without crushing you because you're not using the most difficult progression that you're capable of. In this way, you'll be getting better and improving tendon strength without overdoing it. Now, if ring strength is your main strength training right now, then you can practice this up to 3 times a week. Just be sure to give yourself a day of rest in between each session. After just a few sessions, you're going to find that your strength has already improved. And then you can start thinking about adding in some hanging, some pulling or pushing moves like reverse rows and push-ups. Now the way to progress with this is to use your 10-second practice holds as an assessment. If you find that a particular progression is starting to feel super easy for you, then try out the next progression. Can you hold this new progression for at least 5 seconds with really, really good form? If so, great. Stick with this progression now and work up to being able to hold it for 10 seconds. However, if you find that your form pretty much just crumbles right at the beginning of that new progression, then stick with the previous progression for at least another session or maybe 2. All right, time for some Q&A. I disagree because somebody on the internet said pulling is important and therefore rings equals pulling, and this isn't pull-up, so you are wrong. Yes, pulling is important on the rings, just like having a strong core is in order to get your hips up above your head for things like inverted hangs. However, having the necessary strength to be able to stabilize yourself both above and below the rings isn't going to come from only training pulling movements. That's why the top position is the position for you to start with. What if my hands hurt? Well, that could be because you're gripping the rings too tightly or your wrists are not in the proper position. And what if my wrists are weak? Now, this of course comes back to how you're gripping the ring. So remember to try and make sure that your wrists are in this nice straight line. And also, in order to strengthen your wrists, remember, you just need to focus on working through the progressions that I've laid out for you here for the top position. Next question, what if I'm tall? Luckily, the top position is one move where it doesn't matter if you're tall or short, because the move itself doesn't require you to use leverage in order to work on it. Now, what if I have bad shoulders? Well, first off, make sure that you're actually okay to start training. So if you're going through an injury, then be sure to get the okay from a medical professional. Now, once you are good to go, then working through the progressions in the way that I've laid out can help in strengthening and improving the mobility in your shoulders. Just be smart about the training and don't rush into the other progressions until you're ready. Will this get me jacked? Nope, but that's not really the point with this move. Now, honestly though, working on the top position and getting really, really good at it though is going to help you to start working on some other movements that can help you to build muscle as long as you're training in the proper manner. How long should I hold the top position until I can do an iron cross? Forever. Seriously though, the iron cross is a movement that can take years and years to master, but the thing is, it starts here with the top position. So just focus on what's right in front of you, getting really, really good at the top position. I can totally do the top position with an L-sit. Tell me why I'm wrong. All right, cool, but that depends on what your L-sit looks like. If you're able to keep that nice, proper top position and slowly raise your legs up to that 90-degree position without the top position changing, well, hey, you got it. If not, go back and work on your top position. Next question, what if I'm hypermobile? All right, so this is a great question, and this is actually the case with me. And so what I suggest is that when you have your arms completely locked out, you'll want to actually focus more on a soft elbow. Just a slight bend of the elbow. What this does, it allows the joints to stack in a line with each other and keep you from hyperextending your elbow. All right, next up, will I destroy my elbows? Unfortunately, yes, you could if you don't allow yourself the proper time to slowly and gradually work through the progressions in order to build the proper tendon strength that you need for this position. Next up, another great question, what about using a band? Now personally, I don't encourage people to use a band because I found that the majority of people who do use them become overly reliant on them. And what happens is they tend to rush into those next progressions. Instead, what I feel is a better way to do it is to just spend more time in working through the progressions that I've laid out for you, making sure that you're able to do this in a manner that's going to allow you to progress at a pace that's going to be very natural and beneficial for you. All right, final question. Someone said I'll never have sex unless I do this with the rings turned out. How will I ever get laid? Brother, that's a whole other video. Now, if you're still watching this video, I want to say thanks for sticking around. Obviously, top position is something that I think is extremely important. And if you're new to the ring game out there, please, please, please take your time working through these progressions and get really good at them. Trust me, you're going to be coming back to this position a lot. And the way to be successful and enjoy your ring training is to get really, really good at this. All right, if you have any questions, feel free to leave them below. And hey, have a great day.